Mayor, thanks for joining us again for our monthly check-in. I do have a couple of questions for you. And, we might as well start with what we were just talking about off camera, but it's summer and there's a lot of kids that are not going to school, and the popularity of youth programs is important at this point. And I wondered if you could give me a sense of what the city has been doing on that front.
Youth programming has been something that's been discussed in the city of Cambridge as a need that has been, if not unmet, then not met to the level necessary for many years. And so over the course of the last, I think, a year or so, the city had been working on bringing the Boys and Girls Club to the city of Cambridge as part of the Maces Lane Community Center project in the former Maces Lane High and later middle school. And that's wonderful, and we're still looking forward to that. But the Maces Lane project is still probably a year and a half to 2 years from completion, and the need exists now for programming for young people in this community, especially in kind of marginalized parts of this community. And so we've been working over the course of the last probably 6 or 7 months with the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Baltimore, which is the largest Boys and Girls Club organization in the state, to have them come in and establish a program at the Maces Lane location, but also hopefully prior to the opening of that location. And that came to pass today with a ribbon cutting on Leonard's Lane at the recently acquired Dorchester County Recreation and Parks facility that was formerly the Bay Country Racquet Club. And the county acquired that with the assistance of the state last fall, and then had been negotiating with Boys and Girls Club, with state partners at what was once the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention. And they go through name changes, and I forget the exact name now. I think it's Governor's Office of Crime, Youth Services, and Victim Services, or something of that nature. But working with that with that state office and with the city to try to get the program established there. The governor joined us today. A lot of officials from Boys and Girls Club Greater Baltimore, and also our county officials who helped make this happen. And it's really a great need that's being met in a great location. The program officially opened prior to the ribbon cutting on Monday, and it's Wednesday now. And they've already got 45 young people in the program. They would have more people in the program, but they need more staff. So if anyone's interested in working with kids over the summer, or even beyond that, they'd be happy to have you, because just as there's a need for the programming, there's a need for the people to make the programming a success.
Do you expect the city to do anything more on that front beyond this partnership that you talked about?
Well, so the Boys and Girls Club is going to be at the Leonard's Lane location, and they're also going to be expanding at the Maces Lane location when that community center comes online. And we're also looking for other locations within the city. We'd like to see 4 or 5 locations for them. And we're also going to continue to support the other nonprofits that are working in the community as well, with the youth. And there are others that have met with the city previously, or that are going to be meeting with the city here soon, that want to expand into this area, or are developing kind of organically here in the community, because there is such a great need at this point for this. So it's going to be a multi-pronged approach. One thing that I do like, we've got some folks in the community that are also working to coordinate these nonprofit efforts, so that there's not duplication of effort, and each group and each organization can succeed in the fashion that they need to, while not at the same time having too much overlap, and therefore having kind of lost opportunities as a result.
The other thing I was noticing is that I believe that the council has been looking at the city charter and creating, I guess, a new human relations commission. Can you talk about that?
So the proposal that had been floated, and that's had some positive and some negative feedback, was for the creation of a separate and somewhat independent human resources department. And the thought process behind this is that right now, with the system we have in place, there's a significant amount of responsibility placed with one individual as city manager, to, I think, the detriment at times of the completion of all the prescribed roles. And the reason being, one person can only wear so many hats. And also there are instances and issues that exist at times where that individual is part of the discussion that's ongoing, and or his immediate subordinates or appointees. And so the level of independence, I think, has been something that's been looked at as kind of important. We, from the 27th to the 29th, I and three of the members of the city council went to the Maryland Municipal League conference, and there was a symposium on employment issues within the municipal context. And so the timing was quite good with that. And the attorney that spoke is the lead employment attorney, employment issues attorney, I guess you would say, for Legit, the local government insurance trust. And so we took the time to ask, in cases where some of the human resources function isn't being carried out as a result of whatever it may be, what do you do? And of course, the answer is you establish a department that handles these things, whether it be employee discipline, employee records retention, issuance of training and programming for employees, all these things. And the question was also asked, what do you do in cases where it's an appointee of the executive, whether that be in some municipalities the mayor and others the city manager, in Cambridge it's the city manager. What do you do in instances where it's one of their appointees that's involved in a potential conflict within the employment context, or that individual themselves? And the statement was made quite clearly that you have to have an independent or a third party that performs a review in these instances. And it was specifically stated you don't want it to be your city attorney as well, because they work so closely with professional staff throughout the city's hierarchy, whether that be department heads or division heads here, or the manager, or in some cases even the electeds. But by and large, what's been looked at is an ongoing issue where roles aren't filled because the time simply doesn't exist to interview or to review applications. The issue exists that for decades, and I say that truthfully, 2.5 decades, the employee handbook has not been revised. The employee handbook's not been looked at since I think 1998. So that's well beyond the pale and can lead to a lot of issues. So I understand that there's some discussion in the community that perhaps a charter amendment's unnecessary. But speaking to the city attorney specifically on this issue, it's believed that it is because within the charter, the manager is specifically titled as the human resources director. And because of that, if a department is established, it will be under the leadership of the manager, and a separate advise and consent role for a director can't occur because the position's already been filled, as it were, by the charter, by the function of the language that exists.
We're also starting plans for a 4th of July weekend, and we did hear from some people that they were wondering what the status was going to be with fireworks this year. And then maybe like your own phone, we also got readers who were concerned about the number of fireworks that are already going off throughout the city, and worried about whether or not the city can control that because of the noise and the unpredictability of it. What's the latest on fireworks?
Well, the official fireworks will occur on July 4th. The unofficial fireworks that have been ongoing for the last 2 weeks are a huge problem. And I'm suffering as much as anyone is. It's within earshot of my home. Got 2 dogs, one of whom is darn near insane anyway, and especially loud noises. I've missed 2 days of work because I injured my back because he was underneath of me as a result of this. 86-pound lab. They don't hide well. And so it's something that we've been working on. I've been working closely with Cambridge Police, the State's Attorney's Office, Dorchester County Sheriff's Office. The issue that exists is, unfortunately, there are probably a dozen or 2 dozen groups of people, mostly juvenile, some adult but young, that are setting these things off, and it's occurring in multiple locations, and they move. So you may have one set off on Glasgow Street, for example, and police respond to that area, the people are gone, but while responding to that area, there's another that's set off on Leonard's Lane, or another that's set off on Willis Street. And it's so you're chasing your tail in some ways, because unfortunately, once it goes off, it's too late. And the individual that set it off is gone. So we've been working on trying to figure out if there's a pattern. and it's pretty well randomized. It looks like that the locations. It's essentially find a dark street or a dark location, like the thing often run.
Does social media play a role in all that?
It doesn't seem as though social media is playing a role in that, at least not that we've been able to find. Last year, this was a problem as well, and it was discovered that there were some people that were bringing the fireworks into the community, dropping them for then distribution. And it's unclear if there was a profit motive, if it was just about creating chaos, or what it was. There were arrests made in that case. There was prosecution. The individuals were handled through the judicial system. But what we're seeing now is a return of the same pattern as last year. So I've worked with Chief Lewis, Cambridge Police, and Bill Jones, State's Attorney's Office, and Sheriff Phillips, Dorchester County Sheriff's Office. We've increased some staffing. The Sheriff's Office has a drone program, so we have flown the drone on some nights to see if we can make visual contact with the individuals as they're set off and track them to handle that. It appears there's only been a couple of contacts made with individuals involved at this point. It's still it's so randomized, and it's unfortunately it's occurring over probably a 15 by 15 block area. And with the police force having 3 or 4 on a shift, we've been running guys on overtime on this as well. But it's really, it's the old saying about herding cats, right?
Yeah.
So what we do want to do and what we do plan to do, we've got some more officers coming into the agency, some hires, and that'll be announced officially here shortly. But we're increasing staffing. We're doing some more focused patrol in the areas where this is happening. We're continuing to fly the drone, and we're just looking for community help. If you see something, please let us know. If you happen to know who's doing something or where it's occurring, please let us know, because unfortunately, without the help of those that are being impacted, it's going to be pretty hard to get a wrap on this.
Sadly, we're coming close to an anniversary on the fire that took place, that took the lives of 3 people, 2 children. And some readers have commented that they still see the ruins of that blaze. Are there plans to deal with that site?
So the site of the blaze on High Street that occurred, kind of the corner of Glasgow and High behind the Fat Ricky's pub, that is a very devastating and sad sight to see. What we faced was, because there were multiple deaths and because there were questions with regard to conditions in the property, the fire marshal did a very in-depth investigation and only closed that investigation about 3 weeks ago. It's my understanding that one of the families of a resident or several residents has also been engaging a private investigator of their own with regard to that. So it's still a somewhat active scene with regard to investigation. And unfortunately, it leaves us with little ability to move forward with things. It is condemned. It's my understanding from the Code Enforcement Office that a permit to demolish has been issued, but the demolition can't occur until the investigations are completed. It's sad to say that those lives were lost, and also what was a large and could be a real contributor to our community. The home is destroyed to the point where it has to be demolished, and we hate to see that as well. But we do also want to ensure that it's safe in that area, and that any kind of visual reminder of that tragedy is removed as well. So as soon as we can get to that point, the permit has been issued for demolition. It's just with the investigations and the engagement of a private investigator, we've not gotten there.
My last question is kind of dear to my heart, because this last weekend I tripped over a scooter. It wasn't upright. It was low, below my vision. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm just starting to feel my age. When you fall, it's pretty dangerous. And as we were pulling together the questions today, people were mentioning that there are a lot more scooters around Cambridge, and that has been disconcerting for some people. Have you heard that?
We've heard some concerns. We've heard some good things. And it's one of those things you have to balance, and you also have to go through growing pains. And I think that there are still some growing pains with this. For some background on the scooters, I think there's a misunderstanding that the scooters are a function of the city. What we have with the scooters is a private individual who is working with a national company as a fleet manager, a young entrepreneur. He's actually 18 years old. And the city's involvement only goes so far as having made the decision to look at them legally in the same fashion that a bicycle was looked at. And so that was the decision that was made by the council. And then subsequent to that, of course, that they in exchange for that provide a small return to the city when a ride occurs. And we're forming a separate account for that for infrastructure improvement. And look, there are definitely problems with scooters. They get left places they shouldn't. Sometimes people ride them inappropriately, but we do also, because of our relationship with the fleet manager, we're privy to some information with regard to usage, and we know that there are several dozen people that use these things to get to work now, and you can actually ride it to work through the phone app, place a lock on it so it remains in place so that you can then ride it home. And so we can see that someone rides it, it sits for 4 hours, and then they leave a place of business and get back on it and ride to the same location. Or likewise, 6 or 8 hours, whatever the shift may be that they're doing. So there's benefit there, but those that are riding them also have to understand that as part of the social contract, you also have to ensure that you're not providing an impediment. We're somewhat lucky that the fleet manager is pretty proactive in fixing those issues because they are all GPS tracked. And if there is an issue, there is an ability on the Bird app to report it to the fleet manager directly. Whether you plan on riding them or not, I do encourage you to download the app so that you can, if you see one that's inappropriately placed or you see inappropriate activity, a report can be made. And likewise, if you see inappropriate activity occurring on a public street, make a call to the police, because just like if they're on a bicycle and they're blocking traffic, they're breaking the law. Just like if someone rides by your car on a bicycle and smacks the mirror and busts it, if they do it on a scooter, it's the same thing. If you see someone that's behaving inappropriately on them, make the report, because we want the program to work. But if it doesn't work, we'll move on from it. But we do see a lot of benefits to it as well.
Mr. Mayor, those are the questions I have. Is there anything on your side that you want to make sure that the community knows?
So this past weekend, the 27th through the 29th, was the Maryland Municipal League Conference in Ocean City. And this was the first in-person conference that any of the elected leadership in the cities attended. And I think it's worth talking about that briefly, because, we think of conferences at Ocean City. I'm sure a lot of us think there's a lot of perhaps beer flowing and shrimp being eaten, right? But it's great because there is a seminar program through that's operated jointly between the Maryland Municipal League and the University of Maryland system for certification in what's called excellence in local governance. And so myself and 3 of the commissioners are about halfway through the certification process for that. There's a lot to be learned. There's a lot of insight that's provided. And, though it's a young group, though it's a group that, may not have the experience of past groups, taking every opportunity to learn, to grow as elected leaders, and to better understand how to be the best we can for the city of Cambridge.
Well, happy 4th of July to you. And we'll see you in August, if not before.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dave.